I made a video recently called Frank Sinatra. I did it my way. It was a short, and several people didn't understand it, so I'm going to explain it. The attitude in that song is what the Apostle John was talking about in First John when he said, "For all that is in the world, the lust of the flesh and the lust of the eyes and the boastful pride of life is not from the Father, but is of the world." Okay. Specifically, that song is talking about the boastful pride of life. And what is that? It is the attitude displayed in that song, which has its roots in an earlier Bible verse that we're going to get to. What is the attitude in that song? The attitude is, I can do it on my own. I know what's best. I'm strong and smart and beautiful and proud, and I have it figured out. I got life figured out. I don't need God. I don't need Christ. I don't need to be saved. I don't have to be forgiven. I don't need any of that religion stuff. I don't need any of your wimpy. It's all for wussies and wimps, and I'm a strong, self-made man. That kind of thing. The attitude displayed in that song, it was actually written by Paul Anka, some other guy named Tebow, and a couple other guys, but Frank Sinatra performed it. And they were all what? They were all self-made men, all proud, rich, successful, yada, yada, yada. Okay? And that looks good to the world, but it's the precise opposite of what Jesus says we're really supposed to do, which is what? In Matthew, I believe it's 18, he says, unless you become as little children, you will by no means enter the kingdom of heaven. What is he saying? He's saying that human beings are made to live in love with God. He's our Father. We're made to live in love with him as little children. We're made to hold his hand as we walk through life. That's what we're made for. And the sentiment expressed in that song is the exact opposite of what Jesus is saying. Okay? And the sentiment in that song has its roots at the very beginning of the Bible. When Adam and Eve partook of what? The fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Okay? Which produces that kind of attitude. The fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil is not just a piece of fruit. It's a spiritual dynamic that says, I can be wise, I can have my eyes open, and I can be like God. That encapsulates the attitude expressed in that song. I've had my eyes open so much, and I'm so wise on my own. I can be like God on my own. I don't need God. That stuff is for wimps. I'm a self-made man. Jesus was speaking. The attitude expressed in that song had its roots there in Genesis 3, mentioned in Genesis 2, but then partaken of in Genesis 3. It's not just a nice story where Adam and Eve were walking around in a garden, right? I mean, yes, Adam and Eve were walking around in a garden, but it's a spiritual truth. It's a spiritual dynamic that it's teaching us. It's teaching us that when they partook of that spiritual dynamic of saying, oh, I can do this on my own. I don't need you, God. I don't need a father. I can do it on my own. I'm smart enough. I can be like you on my own. So you stay over there. I got this. I can do it. That's where that attitude, that spiritual dynamic has its roots. It wasn't just a one-time historical event, although it was a historical event. It is a spiritual dynamic that continues to this day. Right? It began there and it's still continuing. So when people sing that song and write that song, all those guys that actually wrote the song, all these successful, successful. They remind me of the rich people when Jesus was talking about the rich man and Lazarus, right? All these rich guys dressed in fine purple every day. You know, they're going to the casinos. They got their private jets. They got their mansions and their pools and their Aston Martins, and they're dressed to the hill. You know, and they think they're so cool while there's millions of people, you know, starving and dying. And, you know, they're not the self-made people. They're the losers. They're the people who can't figure it out, right? Because they're just not as smart as those people. Well, Jesus had something to say about that kind of attitude. He said it was very pointed. He said that when God's kingdom is ruling today, which it will eventually, those people, the rich people, are going to be, they're in trouble. And the poor guy who is laid out at their gate begging for crumbs, going to be the ones that are sitting there with Jesus. So I ask, we don't want to partake of that attitude. We don't want to partake of that. That boastful pride of life is the antithesis of living in love with our Father and being His children. Thank you, and have a nice day.